What would you do if you had pictures of George W. Bush and Hillary Clinton naked at school? It's the
It's
Bob
the
and
Bob and
Sherry
Sherry
Oddcast, the
Oddcast. It's
Bob
the
and
Bob and
Sherry
Sherry
Oddcast.
Oddcast.
Come on in, you'll have a
have a
blast
blast
with the
with
Bob
the
and
Bob and
Sherry
Sherry
Oddcast.
Oddcast.
So I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. If you're a regular listener of the show, you know that I mention it from time to time. And if anything pops up that has to do with Yale University, which is the dominant force in that town, I always stop for a minute and just kind of peruse. And I saw this the other day online. From the 1940s to the 1970s, Yale University, plus other Ivy League schools like Harvard and Vassar and Brown, required some of their freshmen to pose nude for a photo shoot. The goal was to gather material for a massive study into how rickets developed, and that involves sticking pins into the backs of the subjects, male and female. Generations of the country's elite who went to the Ivy Leagues posed, and the archives included the naked photos of well known figures ranging from former President George W. Bush to Hillary Clinton and to Meryl Streep, among others. The photos were destroyed after news leaked and the study was denounced.
Wow. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
haven't had anybody really talk to me much about rickets since my grandmother insisted we drank our milk. Like, this is wild.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It's interesting that the study was denounced. What that says to me is there are some sick fucks who were just taking pictures and they were keeping them. Can you imagine if those pictures were floating around and in
Oh,
this day of social media and everything that
well,
they were available and somebody could leak them or sell them?
you know that the history of medical research is littered with some kooky ass, quacky crazy. Like, there was a whole period of time where people were having their heads measured, and you could pay someone to read the bumps on your head to give you like a health diagnosis, and just
Right.
so much nutty stuff because like as you, people don't like to think about it because it makes folks uncomfortable, the idea of deep time or geologic time. We've not been around all that long as a species. And it's only fairly recently that we've decided like, oh yeah, maybe just cutting someone open and bleeding them into a bowl will not cure them of disease. We are finding our way in the dark, and it wasn't all that long ago clearly that we were still doing some sketchy stuff with medical
Now, was
research.
this sketchy stuff, or was this, as I was alluding to, a sick fuck or two that just thought, let's get some attractive sophomores and tell them that if you want to join this sorority, fraternity, or if you want to help this medical research, we're going to need to do this. Take off your clothes. We're going to stick you in the back, and
If
then
it
we're going to
was
just save the photographs.
It sounds like it was a university sanctioned project, which tells me it's some sketchy, crazy batshit medical experimentation. I mean, was
But it
this
said the
not?
study was denounced. Why would it take decades?
Because sometimes stuff like that falls into the historical dusty file, and it's
Mm-hmm.
forgotten, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
only when it resurfaces and people are like, wait a minute, I can see a picture of George W. Bush naked, that credible established science denounces the study as either quackery or
Yeah.
inhumane or disrespectful or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I'm always up for a good discussion of perverts, but I think this one may fall into the quackery bucket. What do you think, Max?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. Good
And
It's
it's
lord.
just that
I mean, who
interesting.
would
those
come up with such a
schools
thing?
those schools have histories of hazing and secret societies, especially Yale.
Here's what I find interesting about this study, and one more reason why it may have been denounced. My guess is the schools that you named have always been havens of learning for the children of privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so my guess is that they were doing a study of rickets in children from adolescents from privileged backgrounds with adequate nutrition and medical care in parallel
Mm-hmm.
with a study of children from the opposite world. And what we're going to see is rickets a problem that plagues all of us or just the poor? And
All right, I'm going to hope that that's what was done. But can you imagine today the way people will just, expose anything about your life if somebody didn't like George W. Bush or didn't like Hillary Clinton
it had been
and
leaked a
had
long time
those
ago.
photographs? I
Yeah.
think so too.
Let's and who doesn't want to see a young buck-ass naked George H.W. Bush, right? The first Bush, George Herbert
No,
Walker?
second. No, I
Oh,
think it's the second. And he
oh,
was in great shape. That
hey,
guy
I've
was
always
in great
found
shape.
he's not my jam, but I've always found him a little bit sexy. So now you're talking to me. Hang on, we'll be right back.
Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do. And I bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
We're talking about an article that I saw that said between the 1940s and the 1970s, Yale and other Ivy League schools like Harvard, Vassar, and Brown required some of their freshmen to pose nude for a photo shoot for a study of rickets. And eventually the study was denounced for whatever reason, and the photographs were destroyed. And it's a good thing they were destroyed, because I'm telling you, they would be all over the internet right now. Suppose you were the man or the woman that had them, and you said, "Okay, I'm not gonna send them out, but I'm gonna blow these things up, poster size, and I'm gonna hang them in my house, and I'm gonna get a look at what the faces of my dinner guests are when they walk in, and in the dining room over the buffet is George W. Bush, flat ass naked, and in the kitchen it's Hillary."
I'll tell you what, that's its own kind of art. Andy Warhol, oh God, if he could crawl back from the grave and decorate like that, he totally would.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can see the thing is, those institutions, and just the way you phrased it, these schools required undergraduates. That's what makes me think this was university sanctioned and part of what at the time was considered a legitimate study. These institutions graduate the leaders of tomorrow, right? They graduate the future presidents and senators, and
Mm-hmm.
So you had to know that you were taking a pretty good shot that some of these undergraduates would go on to have illustrious careers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm always surprised that famous people who would put themselves out like that, like Cheryl Teagues, the model. She's probably in her 60s now. She was like the hottest model.
Let me just pause. I have never encountered a bigger fucking bitch in real life than Cheryl Teagues, the model. But do go on.
My wife said the same thing. We all three met her at a party. She was really nice to me, and she was really a bitch to the two of you.
Oh my God, she was ghastly. But anyway.
So anyway, I kind of, as a very young guy, she was very, very hot, and she was like the it girl. And I thought, wow, Cheryl Teagues looks so great in that bikini. And then I read that her manager in his Manhattan apartment, in his Manhattan office, when you walked into the office, there's a giant black and white photograph of her behind his desk, topless. And I just thought, these people are really different than the rest of us.
Well, I think especially like if you make your living as a model, you're not here to be exploited, but your comfort level with being photographed and
that's
being,
true.
The physicality of it is really different than it would be with like mine. Ada, just the baby, just joined me. You want to say hi to everybody? What's a dog say?
Dog.
What's that dog say? Woof woof. My husband has to go to the doctor now, so the baby's going to be in my lap for the rest of this podcast. Hopefully she won't understand what we're talking about. So I think that for someone like Cheryl Tiegs, who was the biggest fucking bitch you've ever seen in person, but I digress, is probably super comfortable with having those images that were public anyway. Right?
Yeah, I think you are right. I think I was about 23 years old and working at night in a radio station, and it was the fall, and one of the big department stores in the area needed to have an MC for this fashion show at I guess it was a big public high school, and it sold out. It was primarily women, obviously. And so they hired a bunch of really good local models, and they were terrific looking. And so I opened it up. Welcome to the so-and-so department store and fashion show for tonight. And let's get started. And so they had pre-recorded music and a runway, and the models would walk out with different fashions. So there were like 6 of them, and there were a lot of changes. And I'm waiting because I have to go on periodically and announce something. And I'm back there. And after about the 3rd change, this one absolutely beautiful woman comes walking up, smiling. She turns quickly, walks over to me and says, "Unzip me." And I'm like, okay. And I unzipped her, and she's nude. She's got nothing on. She said, "Help me with this." And she pulls on the next dress, "Zip me up." And off she went. Because that's what that's what you were talking about. She's just, this is what I do. I mean, I'm on display, and it's not that big a deal.
Dancers, models, but
yeah,
even there,
actors.
Actors, but even there's a line, right? There's a line that, and it can be a difficult line for certain people to understand, which is why it can get crossed. So just because a model or a dancer is comfortable in their professional setting with a quick change or asking you to zip them up while they slip in and out of their clothes, just because they're comfortable having images in their portfolio that someone might consider racy or, really super sexual, just because all of that's true doesn't make it true that her body is free territory,
available,
or that you can say anything you feel like saying to her. That is, and I understand that line is so fuzzy and blurry and gray that it's confusing for some people. And that's how you get into, I think, a lot of trouble in the world of show business, is because some of these assholes, and we could sit here and name them, some of these assholes seem to think that there's no distinction between the screen and reality, between the professional persona and the private one.
No, they think they can show up, and it's usually obviously a man, and they have power. And so backstage, these women are in various stages of undress, and you can look all you want, you can say what you want, put your arm around them. No, you can't, especially today. No, I didn't say a word. When I was in that situation, I didn't say one word, and 2 or 3 of them came by, and I thought, don't compliment them. Don't say the dress is pretty. Shut up. Say nothing.
It's so, I don't know what it's like to be a man. I mean, I don't. Maybe I've been a man in another life, and if I was probably a real asshole, but I don't know what it's like to be a man. I only know what it's like to be a woman, where you feel you're in this constant, it's like a balancing act of things are expected of you in terms of, beauty and desirability and accommodation. And at the same time, you got her, teapot? Karamie's here. At the same time, you have to navigate this whole, oh, you think you're entitled to say this to me or to touch me in this way, and I have to rebuff you, but in such a way that you don't become angry and hurt me. Like, it's just so
that's got to be very hard.
Be. It's so hard to be a woman. Men
don't think about that very often. That's true.
It's so hard to be a woman. And here's another thing. Like, I have no, like, I don't have any interest in seeing famous people naked. There's a website called Mr. Skin where some really fucking perverty weird guy, documents all the times that a celebrity has appeared topless in a movie or whatever. I'm like, okay, like, I know what it's like to not get enough love as a child. What is wrong with you that you get your rocks off looking at, that's Halle Berry's nipple. Like, what? I don't understand that. Explain And I'm not saying that's you guys, but explain that to me. Explain that fascination to me.
Well, it's someone that, I mean, obviously men would not know personally in most cases, but there is a certain familiarity because they were on screen, whether it's TV or the movies. And so you have what in your head. I'm talking for the guy. This is not me, but
Yeah.
the guy in his head thinks he knows something about that woman. And so to see her undressed is something that becomes a turn on because it's not just the nude, it's a nude that he knows or thinks he knows.
It's a weird thing that I don't and haven't ever and probably won't ever be able to understand. Like I was nursing a couple of youngins, and who didn't see my nipples at that point, right? They were just in and out everywhere. There's the guy at the Texaco. Hey, Benny, these are my nipples. Flight attendants.
Forget the time you pulled up your shirt. You were wearing a bra, and you went, "Look at the size of these things."
I was a B cup.
No.
What is the matter with you?
I was a B cup, Max, before I got pregnant. I've been a double D ever since. I whipped my shirt up and said, Max, would you look at the size of these things? What the hell? Where does it end?
No.
I mean, I
You know, if a guy said, let me drop my trowel and show you, that'd be the end of your career.
And also, I think that we have women's bodies and men's bodies are commodified in completely different ways. Like, let me think of a celebrity that I think is absolutely delicious, Chris Hemsworth. I don't want to see his penis. And here's why. They're goofy looking on a good day. Y'all's dicks are goofy looking. They're goofy looking when they're flaccid. They're kind of goofy looking when they're erect. I love Chris Hemsworth. I don't want to see him all the way naked. And maybe
part
that's
of it
just
is
a
the
woman
goofiness. Thing. It's a woman thing. It's more than just the goofiness, right? I think that men, and it's been proven, are more visually stimulated than women are. I'm not saying a woman doesn't take a look at a guy like that and say, yes, indeed, that's what I want. I want a little bit of that. But I don't think it, from a visually stimulation point of view, it's as robust.
And yet there are certain aspects of a man's body that are absolutely a turn on. There's no question. Like a really hot guy with just like without his shirt on, and the way that the abdominal muscles kind of nip in right by the hips, and there's just a little hollow there where you could hook your thumbs. Yeah, bring that on all day long. Just don't make me look at your dick. Now I have a friend who dated a guy in college, and he came out of the bathroom one day naked, right out of the shower, fully aroused with a Krispy Kreme donut stuffed onto it. And she said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I know how much you like donuts." It was so funny, right?
Hey, speaking of hot and now.
Yeah. I mean, it was meant to be funny, and it was really funny, but he knew that if he didn't slap a donut on that bad boy, just showing up with it wasn't going to be anything. Yeah. And of course, there are women who feel differently. There are women who think that's hugely erotic and arousing. I can't imagine anything that would be less titillating for me than a black and white medical photo of a 19-year-old George W. Bush. Like, that would be so weird to me. And yet I know there's probably a whole community where that's sort of like a fetishy kind of thing.
Yeah, it probably is. The funniest thing I've seen on TikTok, well, not the funniest thing, but it was just a little passing thing. It was kind of funny where guys would show up, their girlfriend is watching TV or their wife is reading or whatever, or cooking in the kitchen, and they just walk into the room naked. And they're rolling on it, they got the phone out, and it's catching the reaction. And they're going, "What are you doing?" And a lot of it was cute, but some woman staged it, and she's sitting there reading a book, and you don't see the guy, of course. All you see is her, and he comes up and he's rolling video on it, and she looks over and sees that he's naked, and then she puts on her glasses and looks. And then she picks up a magnifying glass.
Oh, and then kind of leans in.
It was so funny. It was very creative.
While we were talking, I just did a quick Google on this Ivy League study that we got into, and I was right about why it was discredited. There's a component to it that is really, really shitty and unethical. What they were looking at, it was part of a larger project that was being run by two gentlemen named William Sheldon and Ernest Houghton. And they were using the data that they gleaned from these Ivy League students to support their theory of body types and social hierarchy, as in some human beings are innately superior to other human beings because of certain physical characteristics.
Oh, my goodness, really?
Which gets us into very troubling waters when we think about some of the really grim genetic studies that were being done in Nazi Germany. There's a very racist history in medicine involving head size, head shape, limb size, limb length. So you can best believe that this was discredited, not because they were perverts. It's worse. It'd be better if they were perverts. Some of the images were sent to the Smithsonian. Most of the images were destroyed before 2001. However, late last year, a handful of these photos showed up on eBay, which tells you that a handful of these photos exist in some sort of private collection or ownership.
Wow.
Yeah. So...
Isn't that interesting? So it really had to do more with a certain class or type of people saying that there is a difference. We should be in charge because we are medically and intellectually superior.
Yeah, this was not about, although who wouldn't want to see, Bella Abzug naked, right? Or whatever. I mean, this was not about titillation or any kind of like black market softcore porn. This was about something far darker and far more sinister, and that's why these schools are saying that this is a discredited study, as it should be.
Good. Well, now we know. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, I suspected that because it's like I said, I'm always up for a good pervert story, but there's no way you get these Ivy League schools, the Seven Sister schools. There's no way that one pervert, however crafty, and a pervert can be very crafty, one crafty pervert does not persuade a dozen Ivy League institutions to participate in his creepy fetish. This is really some dark. Here's the thing, folks. There are a lot of dark chapters in our history as a country and as a people, in our scientific history. We like to think about science and medicine as being somehow neutral, like math, right? Math is neutral. And we like to think that those fields of study are also neutral, but those fields of study are, being pursued by human beings. And as human beings, we're all flawed and we're all vulnerable to the currents that we grow up in culturally and the time that we live in and all of that. And at the same time that discredited study was going on, that's the time when people were looking for genetics to justify discrimination. Like it's all of a piece. Yeah. But I'm not arguing that George W. probably looked pretty good as a college student because he looked pretty good as a president.
Yeah, he's still in great shape. Just saw an interview with him a few weeks ago. So anyway, there it is. Interesting little piece of history.
That's it.
Piece of history.
That's it for today's Oddcast. Join us next time when we take you into a bubble bath with Millard Fillmore and Rutherford B. Hayes. And let me tell you what, the early presidents of the United States were party animals. New episodes of the Oddcast every Monday and Friday. Check out Fun Size. It's about 10 minutes long. Snack size, perfect for sharing. It's a grab of some really funny stuff off the regular Bob and Sheri show. Hosted and created by Max. Our website is BOBANDSHERI.com. Love to hear from you, especially if you have something nice to say. But if you have something shitty to say and it's really well phrased, we enjoy that too. Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy. And we'll see you next time on the Oddcast. Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Bob and Sheri podcast and the Bob and Sheri Oddcast. We would love if you would subscribe, rate and review, and share it with a friend on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you go. And thank you again for listening.